Good Thursday morning, and thank you for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Jason Hackett. Let's get right to your headlines. New information this morning on a lawsuit filed against alleged rival gang members aimed at keeping the state fair safe. And if you haven't checked your calendar, the fair starts exactly 1 week from today. Audrey Russo is at the fairgrounds with details.
That's right. These 6 alleged gang members come from 2 groups, 3 from Muddy and 3 from the group called the Ville. They've agreed to stay away from both the fairgrounds and some of the surrounding parking lots. And under this agreement, if one of them shows up to the fair, they will be promptly escorted out. Take a look at these social media posts. These pictures are essentially advertisements that the groups have been posting online, advertising the biggest fight of the year. Now, under this agreement, they're not allowed to promote or encourage any sort of fighting. Now, it's worth noting that not all of the 10 alleged gang members in question have signed on to this deal. 2 didn't respond, and 2 are challenging the lawsuit from state and local prosecutors. Still, a former federal prosecutor that we spoke to says that reducing numbers is a good way to decrease tension at the fair.
I think that what we're seeing is that this problem, this situation is being diffused. It's something where they're avoiding the conflict.
So how are they going to enforce these agreements? Well, there's going to be several field identification teams at the fair, and they're going to have knowledge of not only of all the 10 gang members that are named in this lawsuit, the alleged gang members, but they're also going to have an eye on some of the other folks who've been banned from the fairgrounds this year. Back to you.
Well, this story just coming into the newsroom. Ukrainian emergency crews are working to put out massive fires after Russian missiles struck the capital of Kyiv early this morning. At least 12 people were killed and more than 24 were hurt. Parts of the city are still without power as the strikes damaged apartments, warehouses, and a children's hospital. Well, this morning, transportation officials are investigating a mid-air collision between a state police helicopter and a small plane, leaving 1 person dead and 2 others injured. The FAA says a Cessna 150 and the state helicopter collided shortly before 8 p.m. last night in central Pennsylvania, about 30 minutes southwest of Harrisburg. The National Transportation Safety Board is leading the investigation, with the FAA and state police assisting. Right now, we don't know what caused the collision, but when we learn more details, we'll be sure to update you. Right now, a 25-year-old St. Paul man is in custody, accused of shooting from point-blank range at a Ramsey County deputy. The incident started Tuesday night near Rice Street and Roselawn Avenue in Maplewood, where a deputy responded to a road rage incident. Investigators say the deputy pulled behind a Buick and the driver made a sudden U-turn and fired at the deputy. They say the driver left the scene speeding towards the McDonough townhomes near Timberlake Road in St. Paul. Deputies eventually caught up to the suspect and arrested him. No one was hurt. Well, this morning, a look at key evidence that led Fleet Farm to settle a long legal battle with the state of Minnesota over straw gun purchases. In February, Fleet Farm agreed to pay $1 million and strengthen its training, sales, and tracking of firearms purchases after Minnesota accused it of ignoring warning signs that led to 2 convicted straw buyers obtaining 37 guns. One of those guns, purchased by Jerome Horton, was used in the deadly St. Paul Truck Park bar shooting. And before it happened, a Fleet Farm employee raised concerns about the sales.
There was never any input given from Fleet Farm corporate on whether or not the sales should stop to Mr. Horton. They actually continued, and they sold him 11 more guns after this.
The Attorney General's office also shared documents that revealed Fleet Farm later used the employees' own warnings to leaders for training on obvious signs of straw purchases. Right now, MyPillow founder Mike Lindell says he is privately funding a hand recount and audit in Minnesota's Republican gubernatorial primary. In a statement, Lindell cited what he called multiple irregularities his team found on election night, though he didn't provide any evidence. Lindell lost to Minnesota House Speaker Lisa Dameth by roughly 11 percentage points. This morning, the United States is $40 trillion in debt. Still, President Trump is touting his economic policies, including tariffs. That's after pausing new tariffs on Canadian goods while negotiators try to make a new deal. NBC's Alice Barr has all the details from Washington.
Hi there. The new numbers on the national debt are setting off alarm bells among many economists over what it could mean for consumer costs in the coming years on everything from credit cards to mortgages, all as we close in on midterm elections where the economy is front and center. The American economy hit with a painful headline: total U.S. debt now topping $40 trillion for the first time, according to the Treasury Department. That number more than doubling over the past decade, with President Biden and President Trump in his first term each adding about $8 trillion in new debt, much of that borrowing for pandemic response. The White House in a statement saying it's focused on slashing waste, fraud, and abuse in federal spending while accelerating economic growth, promising lower inflation and pushing for an interest rate cut to lower costs, something President Trump called for Wednesday while downplaying economic concerns.
I think we have a very powerful country, and we're powering through these ridiculous interest rates.
All as the president is threatening crushing economic warfare against Iran and unprecedented isolation, saying any country that does anything to help Iran evade sanctions will face tremendous economic consequences. That while hitting pause until midnight Friday on a punishing 50% tariff against Canadian goods, excluding oil, gas, and critical minerals. President Trump now saying the U.S. is close to reaching a new trade deal with Canada.
I delayed it at the request of Canada for 3 days so we can iron out the details. But it's going to be a wonderful deal, hopefully a wonderful deal for everybody.
Canadian negotiators say they're finalizing the deal's text.
I am very confident in these discussions.
As President Trump leans into economic leverage against friends and foes. Shifting back to the national debt, which ticks higher by the moment, here's the problem for consumers. The kind of deficit spending lawmakers keep approving for decades, which has made the debt balloon, can also lead to even more inflation, piling on the challenges as the government works to get rising prices under control. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
A packed meeting last night to hear from the developer of a proposed North Loop data center. The North Loop Neighborhood Association can make recommendations to City Council about projects in the area and said Legacy Investing didn't provide enough information last night to get their support. The developer wants to turn the 13-acre old Star Tribune printing facility into a data center and surrounding parcels into retail and housing.
Because we are sort of providing an opportunity to not only take this building that was has been vacant for a couple years and turning it into what we feel is sort of a highest and best use from sort of an economic generating perspective.
These men don't understand the concerns of this community. They're not from this community. They're not from this state.
Now, that developer already helped turn the Minneapolis Sleep Number building into an urban data center that supporters say use fewer resources and can help lower the tax base. Well, this morning, new images of a brazen art heist that happened in broad daylight right here in the Twin Cities. One person has been arrested, but authorities are still looking for another suspect and some of the stolen art. Megan McPherson's in the newsroom with video of the crime as it happened.
Yeah, so 14 of the stolen paintings worth more than $50,000 were found, but 4 are still missing. This happened in early June, but in July, the paintings stolen from artist Leon Hushcha's studio were found inside a St. Paul storage unit rented by a man named Ricardo Bassat. Police say they also found a portfolio of sketches bearing Bassat's signature, along with mail addressed to him. Take a look at this new surveillance video. It gives us a glimpse at what happened. It shows 2 people arriving around 6:45 in the morning with an empty cart. One of those people was wearing a UPS vest. Then about 30 minutes later, the pair, as you see here, is pushing a loaded cart out of the gallery and onto the loading dock. According to the criminal complaint, a tipster later identified the man in the UPS vest as Bassat and told police that he had rented a storage unit in St. Paul, and that is where they ultimately found the stolen paintings. Bassat was in court on Monday, charged with third-degree burglary. Police, though, are still looking for Bassat's alleged accomplice seen in that surveillance video. Back to you.
The Minnesota Vikings getting ready for this weekend's preseason game by practicing with the opponent, the Baltimore Ravens. And we're getting a look at both teams here. Julia Daniels is here with details.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julia Daniels. Day 1 of joint practice between the Vikings and the Ravens is officially in the books, and I personally love this point of camp. Both teams are letting loose a little bit more, and you might even see even a little bit more from their scheme than you would in a preseason game, and always there's a sprinkle of drama. Yesterday, team drills is where we got the real juicy stuff. Kyler Murray made some plays. He also flubbed a few things, but you know what? That's to be expected. We spoke with several guys after practice, and when I asked left tackle Christian Darrisaw what yesterday told him about how the offense is gelling, he told me this.
We still got some things to clean up, but that's what, like I said, practice is for, and I feel like we're at the right point, and like I said, we'll be able to watch this film tonight and come out here tomorrow and really execute. And we see what they're going to do to us that we didn't know coming out onto the field. We're going to make our adjustments. I'm pretty sure they're going to make some too, but yeah, we'll be ready to go.
So today is the second and final joint practice for these teams, also the last public practice for Vikings fans. And we'll have a recap of this one coming up at 4, 5, 6, and 10. In Eagan, Julia Daniels, KARE 11 Sports.
The regular season almost here, so close. Stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.